bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
It is a football Thursday here on Birds 365, a full practice Thursday, or so we hope. For the Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald here, John. Birds 365, Johnny Mac, another day counting down to the final regular season game, Eagles-Giants. We know it's at stake. We'll certainly break it down for you over the course of the day. Before we do, first chance back at the NovaCare complex for the Eagles to come together as a team after what transpired Monday night in Cincinnati with the almost near tragic incident and injury to Damar Hamlin. Word out of Cincinnati was that he's showing signs of improvement. Media release by the Bills said that that's the case. Not a lot of details on why that's the case or what's that what makes it that the case. But any signs of improvement this time, it's got to be good news for absolutely everybody, right?
Yeah, no question. I especially for the Bills. I know they had a Zoom meeting with a family member to get updates. You know, I am surprised. Typically in this type of situation, you know, high profile patients have a lot of updates, doctors speaking, and it's been kind of a little bit surprising how much little information has trickled out. But behind the scenes, evidently, pretty good news. Again, you know, with all things considered, and this is typical from what cardiologists say when you have a significant cardiac event. It takes a little bit of time, so that part doesn't raise any eyebrows. But yeah, behind the scenes, some good information, and that's the best you can hope for at this standpoint. As far as the Eagles, you know, everybody went through this all around the league because it's such a big story. But, you know, a little surprised at how quickly it was business as usual, to be honest. I talk about this all the time. Football players have already made this analysis in their heads. They know how dangerous this game is. They know there's a cost, there's a benefit. And I think when we talk about concussions, it's the problem with concussions is, you know, 20-year-olds think differently than 50-year-olds. And, you know, at 20, you're like, yeah, I'm going to go, I'm going to make a lot of money. This is what I can do. There's not a lot of people in their early 20s that can make millions of dollars in any other industry. So you make that cost benefit analysis. A lot of them don't have families. Then as you get older, you have families, you start thinking about other things, and, you know, you think differently when you're retired. And I don't know how you fix that. This was such a you know, whatever adjective you want to use, this was such an out of the norm situation. I think a lot of players realize that, and you know, everybody hopes Damar gets better, but you got to move forward. And I think that's been the sentiment in most buildings. So when we talked about, would the players group together and say, we're not going to play this weekend? No, that's not going to happen. They're going to play this weekend.
And I believe that the closeness that you come to a potentially tragic event like this, the more it affects you.
Oh, yeah.
The way the Philadelphia Eagles reacted yesterday, their first team gathering, of course, is going to be different than the Cincinnati Bengals who were on the field with them, and certainly different from the Buffalo Bills, who that's one of their brothers. That's one of their teammates who were in the hospital bed in Cincinnati. So I think it has something to do with how close in proximity. If it was another 1:00 game on Sunday and there were a bunch of games being played at the same time, it would have a lesser effect. A little bit more because it was a solo Monday night. Everybody's paying attention to that type game. But if you weren't there, you're not going to be affected the same way that the players who were there were after the fact. And you add to the fact that the Eagles got to see their fallen teammate. Now, not to the degree of certainly Damar Hamlin, but they had a teammate carted off the field on Sunday. And sure enough, he was back at the NovaCare complex yesterday. With Josh Sweat being with his teammates, did not participate. They list him as quote unquote day-to-day, which is almost amazing unto itself. But that also is going to hit home, and the players are going to react to it, and it's going to affect the way that they think about. You mean I need to go out on the field on Sunday? As you just stated, most of them will go, yeah, that's what I do. I'm a football player, and that's I've already done the cost benefit analysis, and this is my livelihood, and that's what I'm going to do. It doesn't make them harsh. It doesn't make them hard-hearted. It just makes them one of a large group of young men who are willing to take the risks to be able to get the benefits from being an NFL player.
Yeah, and I talked to Son Reddick about, Josh and how you do that. And you think about, Josh got hurt early in the game, and the Eagles had the bad first drive defensively, and then they responded actually really well and played pretty darn well defensively for the majority of the game. And you wonder, how do you bounce back from that, and how do you refocus? And it was very similar, Son. It's just like that's what we do. Now, part of it was on the field. Like, we don't know at the time, and Nick Sirianni has let us in on this, and Fletcher Cox and Hassan as well. Josh was talking to people, and he's saying he was all okay, and after things settled down a little bit, and so they had more information right away, but things are different now, and they're very cautious, and they're going to err on the side of caution. And when you see somebody stretch it off, and you see them restricting their mobility as a precautionary measure, it's scary for fans and people that don't have information. But Josh was communicating with some of the guys and Nick Sirianni, so they had a good feeling it wasn't going to be terrible. So everything is, and now we know with Damar Hamlin, everything is scaled. He's fighting for his life versus, God forbid, there's been far too many spinal injuries in football at every level, and that's part of the violence of this sport. But one of the things with Hamlin's created it, because remember, I always say this, Jody, when ESPN is doing something or Fox Sports, that's one thing. When CNN shows up and ABC News and MSNBC and Fox News show up, then it becomes this massive story that has all these tangles and political variations and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things with football is obviously violence in football. Now, football is a violent sport. I think we can all agree with that. But this was not out of the ordinary. This was not violence. This is a hit you see. I shouldn't say, because every hit is violent. But in that structure, this was not an out of the norm hit by NFL standards. You see hits that gets flagged, that cause concussions. Everybody was upset about Tua earlier in the season, having what they feel is an undiagnosed concussion. That's still undiagnosed because it never got diagnosed as a concussion, but people believe it was a concussion, and perception overtakes reality. And people assume, oh, a 24-year-old player had a cardiac event on the NFL field. What a violent sport. It wasn't that.
No.
It wasn't that.
And it's something that hopefully those who don't understand, and or, as you say, the CNNs, the Fox News, you get a news reporter come in who doesn't understand the game and the way that it's played, and they're going to jump to some incorrect conclusions, which is tremendously unfortunate. But the good news was that, at least as per the report by the Bills were the biggest disseminator of information yesterday, that certain of his signs are improving. That's the only new news, as you noted there. It's not been as chock full of news updates as you would have expected. We'll take anything we can get. As long as the news is good, that's good news. And unfortunately, for a lot of us, we got to go with the flow, and we have to do what we do and talk football, because that's what we do here on Birds 365. So we're not forgetting about Damar Hamlin. We're not putting him aside. We're just adding Eagles information in their upcoming game against the Giants here. And we thank you for streaming in. We weren't not going to talk about it, but we're also not going to spend the entire 2 hours talking about it today. It just makes it difficult because in a lesser comparison, we've got Eagle injury news to deal with, and it seems minuscule. It's big in the context of the Eagles versus Giants, but no life-threatening situations with the Eagles. They did activate 3 players yesterday, started their practice window. We thought only one of which was going to be a contributor, but maybe it could be more than that. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's practice window open. Brett Toth's practice window up. Is Brett Toth still on the team? Sorry,
Yeah.
don't mean to joke, but
Come on.
he has been so far out of our consciousness. He's coming back. And Robert Quinn as well, who might actually be a guy who does get. I thought that there was a good chance we'd seen the last of Robert Quinn on the field for the Philadelphia Eagles, but we didn't know Josh Sweat was going to get hurt in the next to last game of the season. All 3 of those guys had their practice window, which yesterday was a walkthrough window, activated. What do you think the potential contributions are from these 3 players, either this week against the Giants and or come playoff time?
Well, CJ is number 1, and that's a big one, and that's an indication that they expect to get him back for the playoffs. I wouldn't expect CJ for the Giants game. You never know. I mean, you can always activate guys. It's been a long time though. So I think they want to get him back in practice, and I think the focus was always on the postseason more than rushing him back for the regular season. So you have this 21-day practice window. You don't have to activate people off injured reserve. You can take the full amount of time. You can take 14 days. You can take 13 days. So I don't think he's going to be in the mix for the Giants, but I think it's a very big deal for the postseason. And that's number 1. As you mentioned with Robert Quinn, yeah, I mean, I think that's directly related to Josh Sweat, and hopefully day-to-day means day-to-day. Again, I wouldn't expect to see him against the Giants, but hopefully Josh can make it back for the playoffs. He certainly thinks he's going to be back for the playoffs. And you needed an extra body at defensive ends. And Robert, if he's healthy, and he had that knee scoped, so it was legitimate, anytime. I was the person who said, they have too many bodies on the defensive line. Maybe they're playing a little bit fast and loose, and putting Robert Quinn on injured reserve, but he did get the knee scope. So it was a legitimate injury, but obviously, somebody who's been playing as long as Robert Quinn, you always have things wrong with you, and maybe they just took advantage of it that way to get it fixed. And Maybe, who knows? Maybe he can contribute. He's been a good player in the past. With Toth, I think it's more of, you're at the end of the season. He's been ready to go from a physical standpoint for a long time. He tore his ACL in week 18 last year. And the Eagles didn't want to lose him. They like him as a player, but they didn't have a spot with the depth they have on the offensive line right now. So they just kept him off to the side. Now that the season is ending, they can get him in practice. He can work with the team, but I don't think it's relevant to, being activated or being a contributor or anything of that nature. Now, that could change too. I mean, we know Lane's situation. He's going to try to play through it, but can he play through it? Now, the Eagles still have Jack Driscoll and Andre Dillard, and those guys are the ones who are main in the mix. Brett is very versatile, but right now they don't need another body, so I think it's just about getting him some work before the end of the season, and he can now get back into practice. So I don't think that's as relevant to the roster as the other two. And then you have the Jalen Hurts, obviously very good sign. He was limited. And the reason why is because Wednesday's install day. So, that's when you install the game plan. So the fact that this is the first time he's done any work during install day, so to speak. So that's a very good sign. I think we'll have a very clear picture today, as I mentioned, if Jalen's going to play or not, unless the Eagles kick us out of practice before the ball security drills, which is always a possibility with this team. But typically they don't do that. So I think we're going to get a very good indication on whether he's going to play today. And any other injuries I missed of interest?
No, the most important one, as you said, is the Jalen Hurts one. And it was reported that he took first team reps in the walkthrough. Are there really first team? It's a walkthrough. What does first team reps in a walkthrough mean?
Yeah, I think it's more of, he was involved with the install, as I said. And that's significant. Basically where that comes from is probably, when you see Eagles source, it probably means an Eagles player, whispered it and to their mind, he's burst out there working on installs. So that's probably what they mean by that.
Well, whatever it is, it's good news. Again, we take what good news we can get in whatever shape or form. And the fact that it is trending in the direction of Jalen Hurts being ready to go and ready to start against the Giants, I got to believe is good news as far as Eagle fans are concerned. We appreciate you Eagle fans streaming on with us here on Birds 365. You got John McMullen and Jody McDonald here. We will add a third voice. He's a familiar one, jumps on with us all the time. Martin Frank from the Delaware News Journal going to join us next here on Birds 365.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for a December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Rams starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Post-game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post-game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
Along with John McMullen, I'm Jody McDonald. We are Birds 365, and we get a chance to talk to some of the best Eagle beat reporters in town, and certainly that's the case again today. Joining us is Martin Frank from the Delaware News Journal, and a guy who's jumped on with us plenty during the year. So here's where I want to start, Martin. Mm-hmm. We started doing the show a year and 2/3 ago, somewhere thereabouts. Our 450th episode here today, and you've 450, been Martin. 450. Nice round number for a Martin Frank appearance. Now you've been on with us plenty of years. We plenty of times. We know what the Eagles did last year. Surprised to make the playoffs. They get handled easily by Tampa Bay. Come back, more legitimate contender coming into the year, and they run out to a 13-1 record, and then they lost the last two games. You guys get a grasp on this. Those of us who don't attend practice, don't go there every single day, don't. So we lean on guys like you. What do you think the vibe is around the Eagles right now? Because it ebbs, it flows, it goes up, it goes down. Yeah. You've been watching it for years. You covered the team for years before Birds 365 started, but we always look at things through our own light of how long we've been doing a show. How would you describe the vibe with everything that's transpired about the Philadelphia Eagles this year going into Sunday's game against the Giants?
Yeah, actually, there's a quote from A.J. Brown just yesterday in practice when he was asked about that. He said, "I'm pissed off." And I think a lot of players are. I mean, because they have to play in a game that should have been meaningless. I mean, this should be, they should have already clinched the top spot. They should have already clinched the NFC East championship. Division title. So they should be going into this like resting their starters, maybe getting, treating it like a preseason game, maybe getting a guy like Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders, AJ, and Devontae Smith, a series or two, maybe play the first quarter, come out of the game, watch the backups play, kind of laugh, take it easy on the sidelines. And instead they have to play and they have to win. I mean, there's such a huge difference between going into the playoffs as the number one seed with a bye week and home field advantage for 2 games going to the Super Bowl, as opposed to, losing this game, having Dallas win the NFC East if Dallas wins, and then you're the wild card team, and hey, you have to play Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road again for the second straight year. And you know what? Brady's still pretty good. They still got a pretty good team.
Yeah, we've seen that movie. Could you imagine, even if they played well and they were up, say, 16-10 in the fourth quarter and Brady gets the football late, there's going to be some hearts and throats. But I do think you're right, but the irony of Week 18, Martin, is the Giants don't have to play, similar to the Eagles last season. I don't think they're going to play to win the football game. Now, Brian Daboll could have autonomy. Who knows? He might be competitive, but it certainly seems trending out of New York. The stories is that the Giants are going to handle it like you just said. maybe the starters are out there for a couple series, and then at least the key players move them down. You got to play, sit them down. You got to play some, obviously. And if that's the case, the Eagles should be fine. But while I say that, shouldn't the Eagles be fine anyway? Especially if Jalen Hurts is back. They beat this team, what was it, 48-22? The talent differential is huge. 2 games with Gardner Minshew affects the psyche that much of Philadelphia. I mean, this team was 13-1 with the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. They're a good team. They, like you said, people, the last 2 weeks have kind of made everyone forget that they were 13-1, just 2.5 weeks ago and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, they should beat the Giants. There shouldn't be any problem. But, these doubts start creeping in, and, they have to play a must-win game technically, which is probably like their first must-win game of the season, all things considered. And, crazy things happen in this game. I mean, we've seen it before. We've seen it often, a team that has no chance of winning somehow, everything goes right. And the one thing, by playing all these guys on Sunday is you run the risk of injury. I mean, it's kind of been happening to the Eagles lately. I mean, they still don't have Lane Johnson. Probably not going to have Avonte Maddox back. Josh Sweat, suffered a pretty scary injury on Sunday. I mean, it doesn't look like he's going to be able to play. So, you want to get your guys healthy. You don't want to run the risk of getting more guys hurt. And, that could happen Sunday as well, too. I think there's a lot of kind of nervous energy, but like you said, they should beat the Giants. And if they do, beat the Giants pretty handily, then, everything will go back to normal, and the Super Bowl train will be running again like it has been for most of the year.
On schedule. Yeah.
Martin, I want to follow up on something you said. I like the way you said it. This is the first must-win game for the Eagles season. Okay, all right, the first game of the season. Must win? No, it wasn't. Or the second one they were won, or the third one. You're right. This is the first must-win game of the season. So logically, a pressure comes with that. Should we be nervous about the fact, not that the Eagles can't withstand pressure, but they've gone 17 weeks without it. An entire year since Tom Brady walked off the field after when was the last time they played the must-win game? Yeah, down in Tampa last year. That's a long time and a lot of changes. So if this is the first time as a group they face a must-win situation and the pressure that accompanies it, should we be worried about it from an Eagles standpoint?
I don't think so. I think they can handle business. I mean, I think what these last 2 weeks have done in a lot of ways is kind of shock these guys back into reality, saying, we can't be on cruise control. We have to, buckle down. We have to treat this like a playoff game. James Bradbury was saying yesterday that, 2 weeks ago when they were 13-1, they kind of looked at it and they probably looked too far ahead, and maybe they kind of took their next couple games lightly. They thought they could just show up on the field, even with Gardner Minshew, and, if not beat the Cowboys, and definitely beat the Saints, and, not have to worry about anything. So, this kind of shocked them a little bit into reality, saying, all right, we got to buckle down. If we're going to make this playoff run, we have to win this game. We have to focus on the Giants, get this win, because they've been playing like that most of the year, taking their opponents, just worrying about the upcoming opponents and pretty much blowing them out. I mean, they haven't really had too many close games up until the last 3 or 4 weeks. So, I think this kind of shocks them a little bit back into reality, and, I think they'll be okay.
And there was some good news on the injury front yesterday, Martin. You mentioned the bad news with Avonte, and obviously Lane Johnson's not going to be back until the playoffs as he tries to play through the core muscle injury. Josh Sweat, we all know the scary situation. Jalen Hurts, first and foremost, he's at install day for the first time, so that's a very positive development, number one. And I think we'll get a clearer view today if he goes through those ball security drills. I think he's playing. unless they kick us out. They might kick us out, Martin. And then you have 3 players they started the practice window on. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, most notably, but also Robert Quinn and Brett Toth. You don't think CJ is playing for this game. This is about the playoffs, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think there's a chance Robert Quinn's going to play.
Yeah.
Because, Josh Sweat doesn't look like he's going to play, and they're kind of, they kind of need some depth there at defensive end. So I think out of the 3, the more likely guy to play would be Robert Quinn. Chauncey, he's been out for a while, and as Nick Sirianni was saying the other day, I mean, it's an injury where you pretty much just have to shut it down and rest. So, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson needs the time to ramp back up into game shape and everything like that. So I would think he's probably not going to play right away. I mean, they could obviously use him with Devontae Maddox being out. You got Reed Blankenship at safety. You got Josiah Scott at the nickel spot. So, they can obviously, and Kayvon Wallace obviously is the backup, but it's, not ideal. But then again, for this game, you're going against the Giants, who, even when they're playing everybody to win, their passing game isn't the strongest. You got to stop Saquon Barkley and you got to stop Daniel Jones from running, and then, force them to throw. So I think they could get by this game, obviously, without Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, but obviously, and then getting that bye week, gives Chauncey even another week to get back. So I think that's what I think they're getting ready for the playoffs. I think Robert Quinn, can probably play right away if they need him, and I think they're going to need him.
All right, I'm going to go out on a limb here, Martin, and predict that Jalen Hurts, when he starts Sunday against the Giants, will not run the football as often as he did in that last game that he played against the Bears. What was it? 17 rushing attempts. Yeah, that's got no chance.
Nick will tell you only 2 designed, and Shane will tell you 6.
Understood the disparity and how it can be judged. Go with even if we go with Shane's number of 6 and subtract the sneaks and the kneel downs and everything else, he's going to run it less. How much less? Do the Eagles scheme differently in a game that they need to win? The stakes are pretty high. But even if they lose, they're still going to the playoffs, and they're going to need Jalen Hurts for that game. How does Jalen's return from injury sneak his way into the play calling of the game on Sunday against the Giants?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's not going to be 0. I mean, he has to run because that's what makes him Jalen Hurts, and the Giants would be able to kind of flesh that out pretty quickly if they see he's not even trying to run. Then they'll just clamp down on the receivers and everything like that, and so I mean, I don't think they would play him if they didn't think he couldn't run at all. So I mean, I would say he'd get at least maybe 8 to 10 running attempts, whether it's scrambling out of the pocket, if while trying to escape a sack. There might be a couple design runs in there, maybe 2 or 3, maybe more read option type of things where instead of, his natural reaction would be to keep it, maybe he hands it off to Miles Sanders or tries a short pass. But, he can't just be a drop back, sit in the pocket type of quarterback, because that takes away all his superpower, so to speak. So, he's going to run. I mean, it's not going to be 17, but it could be like 10, 9, 10, 11, something in that range.
Yeah, the superpower aspect, the super healing hasn't come to fruition. But
finally kicking in this week, or so we believe.
Yeah, well, then think about us. It would take us like much longer.
Yeah,
much faster than we do.
2 to 3 years. It's shocking that a 2 to 3 week injury has taken 2 to 3 weeks. It's funny how that works with NFL players, but not an insult to Jalen. Obviously, that's another injury. It has to heal. You mentioned. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of guys, Dallas Goedert the same way. He felt like he could play, basically didn't think he could be should have been put on injured reserve, but he had a small fracture, and it's got to heal. So I do think there's that aspect to it. But, when these guys come back, and I want to get in the weeds on the roster with you, not Jalen, because he's never been on injured reserve. But they have to make some moves. They have to make some roster moves if they bring players back. You bring up the point, Quinn is most likely this week. They got to create a spot for him. Chauncey down the road. I don't think Brett Toth is. I think that's just about getting him some work, late in the season. But we'll see with Lane's issues as well. How do you create these spots? One thing, people say, Martin, is Brett Kern, the punter. He's out of elevations. You got to create a roster spot for him. Now, I've heard the theory that just cut him. He hasn't been great. Sign another punter to the practice squad. But they would have done that by Wednesday. So they got to create a spot for Brett Kern as well.
Yeah. That's a
what
great
do you think
point.
they do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the one thing they could do, if they don't think Avonte Maddox is going to come back, put him on IR. That's one spot. There are a couple guys.
Let me interrupt for a second, because you guys know this better than we do. Putting Avonte Maddox on IR. I know in baseball, this kind of tips the hand of me being more of a baseball guy than a football guy. You can put guys retroactively on the disabled list. If you miss like 3 games, you can put them on the 10-day, and those 3 days that you didn't play count, and then you come back 7 days later. Can you put guys retroactively on IR? Or if they make that decision on Maddox, he's out for the next 4 games.
He's out for 4 games.
Pretty much out for the year. That takes you through the Super Bowl. So, they could have done it last week, but, maybe they just wanted to wait. And, because even if they did it last week, he's probably out until the Super Bowl anyway. So, that's one option. It doesn't seem like it does seem like his injury is a pretty serious one. I don't know if he'd be back in the next couple weeks. Everyone's talking, oh yeah, he'll be back for the playoffs, but that's not guaranteed. That's a possibility. They do get Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back, whether it's, it's probably not this Sunday, but at least in the playoffs. So, that might be one option. You can take your chances, on a guy like, let's say, running back Trey Sermon, cut him and sign him back to the practice squad. Hope nobody else takes him. There are a couple other guys like that. You can possibly hope that get to your practice squad and stuff like that. So they're going to have to take a risk with someone.
Mr. Interrupter here. You're making good points, Martin, so I want to kind of slide off them. If they cut Trey Sermon, would it just be a given they'd re-sign him? Or would he be like, hey, wait a minute, you didn't give me a chance to play, and now you cut me? Or do you think he'd go shopping for another team? It's a very viable answer, but how do you think it would play out?
Well, yeah, he could go shopping, and, another team can just, claim him off waivers and sign him to their 53-man roster, and he's on the roster. He doesn't have to worry about going back to the practice squad, which is a cut and pay also. I'm not sure he would want that either.
Yeah.
It's a risk. Yeah,
the waivers part is the risk, because you can't control somebody else picking them up on waivers. Generally, the luxury Howie has is calling somebody in his office, explaining, look, we need the roster spot. We want you back. We love you. Love them up. We'll put you on the practice squad. You got a futures deal. You're going to get a chance. And, oh, by the way, you might get a Super Bowl ring as well. So you can sell it that way. But you can't control if somebody picks up. So that's where the risk is. The waivers, somebody needs a body, and everybody has so many injuries. And they say, oh, player from the Eagles, that's a pretty good team, is on waivers late in the season. Could be Janarius Robinson. I need an edge rusher. Could be Sue Opeta. I need an offensive lineman. Could be Trey Sermon. I need a running back. That's sort of the risk. I think Howie will make it very clear to whoever they need to juggle what the Eagles want to do, and they can push. That Super Bowl ring is a big carrot, so to speak. So
Right.
The
And then
waivers
also,
part is the concern.
yeah, and also if you're Trey Sermon, I mean, Miles Sanders is a free agent. Boston Scott probably, good chance might not be coming back. So even if Sanders is back, you can slide into that Boston Scott type of role. He's been with the team all year. They like him. They think he might have a future. So, it's possible. But yeah, like John was saying, and it's a great point. Like, if somebody claims him off waivers, now chances are you're looking at 14 playoff teams. I mean, unless one of the other teams that's out of the playoffs, I mean, I don't think they can claim him, right?
No, they're already on futures deals type thing. So they
yeah, exactly. So the playoff teams are now 14 instead of 32, who could claim you. And we already know the 49ers gave up on them. So that's probably one of them that won't. So, and then the Eagles. So now you're down to 12 teams. I mean, maybe it's a risk worth taking.
Yeah. It's a good point. Martin doing math. I love it.
All right, Martin. So you got the Giants coming up on Saturday. We don't know. We're going to have Pat Leonard on next hour, who covers the Giants for the New York Daily News. Dave Ball has played his cards close to the vest, as well he should. Do you think we'll know before the game starts? We're here in Philadelphia. We're always reading the tea leaves. Ooh, Jalen Hurts was on install day, so that means he's going to play. There are little hints you can pick up on leading up to a game as to how the game is going to be handled. If there's a question about how it's going to be handled for the coach, when do you think we'll have a pretty damn good grasp as to what the Giants are planning as far as playing and or resting players come Sunday?
I think we already know. I mean, it would be kind of foolish for Brian Dable to, play all his starters and play to win a game when they have to play the very next week on the road, probably either Minnesota or San Francisco or Dallas or even here. I mean, why would you do that? I mean, Nick Sirianni kind of laid the blueprint for that last year going into that last game against Dallas. I mean, all those guys pretty much sat out, or if they played very little. I mean, Kelsey started the game just to keep his streak going, and then he got out of there. So
yes, Jason will play. Oh yeah, even if this game was meaningless, he would have played.
He would. Yes, absolutely.
2 snaps.
So yeah, I mean, Brian, this is the only chance that Brian Dable gets to rest his players going into the playoffs. They don't get the bye week. There's no chance for that. They have to go on the road. They need Saquon Barkley at 100%. They need Daniel Jones at 100%. So I would think, there's no way he's going to risk them trying to win a game that doesn't mean anything, because they're going to be number 6 in the number 6 seed, whether they win or lose. So I think we pretty much already know the answer. I mean, maybe those guys.
But let me play devil's advocate, and
okay.
I'm stating devil's advocate because I don't really believe it or agree with it, but it is historical fact. The year that the Giants beat the undefeated Patriots in the Super Bowl, last week of the season, the Giants had nowhere to go. They were locked into their playoff spot, and Tom Coughlin says, damn straight we're going to go out there and try and knock them out from the ranks of the undefeated. And they played them really tough. They just lost at the end, and then they caught them again in February in that Super Bowl. And, oh, by the way, that's when they beat the undefeated Patriots. So there is historical precedent, significantly removed from it now in a different situation with a different coach. Yeah. But there is a line of thinking that, hey, you got to keep going. You got to keep your momentum going. That you can't take your foot off the gas, and you don't want to go stop and start heading into the playoffs. You think there's no chance Brian Daboll goes down that road?
No, and one thing is because there's now an extra game, so this is actually the 17th game as opposed to in the past it was 16 games. Not that they, Tom Coughlin cared about that or anything like that. I mean, if they played 20 games, he'd still play them.
He played the same way.
Exactly. By the way, I think Brian Daboll, but we're up to him, he'd play. But, it's not up to him. I think things have changed. Yeah. After he clinched the playoffs he was all fired up. Yeah, we're going to play. the next day, Joe Shane, whispered in his ear, "Yo, settle down, Brian. We're not going to play." So I think that's part of it as well, just the change in the sport as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's different now. Like, plus you got the extra game. I mean, it was kind of funny because, Fletcher Cox was asked about like if the situation the Eagles in is kind of a good thing because now they have to play, a meaningful game, heading into the playoffs, build momentum. And he just laughed. He said, "How many games do we play now? 17."
Yeah.
I mean,
now everybody points back. I like to point this out, Martin. Everybody points back to the Eagles last year. The COVID rules were still in effect, and they manipulated those things to the hilt. The Eagles claim it was all up and up, but I don't believe you, Eagles. So they manipulated the snipples into inactivating 12 different players. And then last year they could elevate 12 off the practice squad. You can't do that this year. That's out the window. So you got to play somebody. You got to play some players, but the key players, Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Dexter Lawrence, maybe Kayvon Thibodeau, Xavier McKinney's back. He's a good player. Those guys are probably going to be, maybe they play a series, maybe they play 2 series, and then you go to bubble wrap. But certain guys have to play. I mean, it's not the preseason. You don't have 90 bodies. You only have the game day roster, plus you can elevate 2 players. So some guys got to play. So the Eagles I'm saying the Eagles got to play. I mean, there's nothing they can do. They put themselves in this position. They got to play.
Yeah. I mean, the ideal situation for the Eagles is, you just blow them out early. You have like maybe 28-3 halftime lead. You bring like Hurts and the starters back for the third quarter. You score a touchdown on the opening drive, and then you get those guys out of there. I mean, that's the ideal scenario for the Eagles. I mean, if it doesn't happen, then those guys got to play into the fourth quarter. But ideally, the Eagles want to get out to a big lead. They want to blow the Giants out. And if the Giants, get Barkley and Jones and, some of those other guys out by, the end of the first quarter, and they take advantage of them in the second quarter, which is, always been their strong quarter this season. Like I think they've scored like over 200 points in the second quarter. So, build a big lead going into halftime, take that opening drive of the third quarter, get another touchdown, and then get those guys out of there. So, I mean, that would be the ideal scenario for the Eagles. Whether or not it plays out, we'll find out. But, if they can get even a quarter of rest for Hurts and Sanders and Kelsey and, guys like that, I think they'd be pretty happy with that.
All right, Martin, need your take on something else going to go down on Sunday besides Eagles and the Giants. We know Eagles win. They lock up everything. Took them longer than it should have, but they get everything that they wanted as per 3 weeks ago. Or the Dallas Cowboys could lose, and then at least they get the division. San Francisco could steal the number 1 seed. At least the Eagles would be number 2 if they win, and if they lose and the Cowboys lose. How much faith you got in Sam Howell leading the Commanders to a victory over the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday?
I don't have any faith whatsoever.
That'd be a 0 on Sammy Howell. You're going to get a text from Kratz. Ed Kratz is the Delaware Valley's biggest Sam Howell fan.
Yeah, well, I think the better way to frame that, Jody, do you have more confidence in Sam Howell or Carson Wentz? Now, that's an interesting conversation.
Well, no. Don't leave my guy Taylor Heineke out of it. He's still on the roster.
It's not that I don't have any confidence in Sam Howell. I just kind of get the feeling that Micah Parsons will be introducing himself early and often to Sam Howell, and that won't go very well for the fighting Commanders.
By the way, Micah, you sure Micah Parsons still plays for the Cowboys? Because he hadn't done diddly squat since he ran his mouth about Jalen Hurts. He hadn't done much for the Cowboys at all. The potential defensive player of the year kind of been a disappearing act the last couple of games.
But like guys like that, I mean, he can smell blood in the water. He knows he's going up against a team that, just going through the motions. he can rack up like 2 or 3 sacks and get right back into the defensive player of the year
Not happening.
go after
Now,
Hassan
Nick Bosa's
with
got
the
that
sack
thing
and
locked
everything.
up.
This could be like a 2 or 3 sack game for Micah Parsons. I think he's going to bring it because he sees a weak offensive line, a team that's like in total turmoil and chaos, and a rookie quarterback. I think he smells blood. I'm not saying that makes him a great player. I'm just saying that, he knows how to take advantage.
Eagles fans better be careful. They're going to go viral with the disrespect for Micah Parsons, and he's going to show up on the divisional round. And,
you watch, he'll have a big game against the Commanders.
Yeah.
Okay. Last 3 weeks, 6 tackles, 1 meaningless sack. That's all I'm saying. He chose to try and minimalize the season that Jalen Hurts has had. And then all of a sudden, he's just one of the Cowboys. If you're right, and he shows up and has 4 sacks this week, I'm going to have to give you credit, Martin. But I'm just noting that he hadn't done a whole hell of a lot since he ran his mouth.
At Frank NFL, follow Martin on Twitter, read him, DelawareOnline.com. Well, I'll leave you there because I need to get your prediction, not for the game. We know how the game's going to go.
Do we?
I do.
Okay.
I'm confident. I'm confident in the game. Well, as long as Jalen Hurts plays.
Yeah.
Odds, Jalen Hurts plays, Martin Frank. Give me a number.
Like 100%.
100%.
100. You're going 100.
Right, then I'm going 100% Eagles win then. There you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
will he be starting or will he be coming off the bench? With my wacky idea from last week, that didn't materialize. No chance of happening this week either, huh?
I think the Minshew
has
kind of left the building.
Understood. Martin, great stuff. Thanks for hopping on. We appreciate it. We're going to have you on during the playoffs too. Thanks for doing it with us today.
All right, always a pleasure. Take care, and see you soon.
You will see John at the game on Sunday. You will see me back there on Birds 365 come playoff time. Unfortunately, we didn't get Ed Kratz on this week. We'll certainly have Eddie on next week. He is the biggest Sam Howell fan on the planet.
He likes Sam Howell, but hey, Washington, it would have been crazy to start anybody but Sam Howell this week after they got eliminated. Now, we talked about Ron Rivera not knowing he could get eliminated. I think he made 2 mistakes, right? I think he shouldn't have went back to Carson Wentz. He should have kept
mistake.
Taylor Heineke. And then he made the decision, I'm going back to Taylor Heineke, and then he changes to Sam Howell because guess what? The organization got in his ear, just like Joe Shane got in Brian Daboll's ear and said, look, this is the situation, Ron. We don't need to see. We know who Taylor Heineke is, and they should have known he's better than Carson Wentz at this stage. By the way, that is one of the great balls in sports history. I mean, the fact that Carson Wentz has dropped to the level he has, we could do a week of shows on that. But Ron Rivera's made so many mistakes. I don't know how he survives. And he might be the nicest guy in the NFL when it comes to head coaches. I don't want to see him fired, but I don't know how he survives that.
I'm not sure he does either. And this is going to sound just crazy. As bad as Carson Wentz has been this year for the Commanders, and I think Rivera woefully made a mistake in replacing Taylor Heineke when he did with Carson Wentz. I wonder if they're missing Carson Wentz at all in Indianapolis. He wasn't real good there last year either, but he's better than what they put out there this year. And I know he's St. Nick here in town, and we hope he's okay because he got hurt in the game against the Giants last week. But Nick Foles was just awful in the game and a half that he played. They're back to Sam Ehlinger, who can't play quarterback in the NFL. There's one guy that I'll give you. Gardner Minshew's better than Sam Ehlinger. Not many other guys in the NFL that I'd say he's a better quarterback who are currently.
What about Nick Mullins? You might see Nick Mullins.
Yeah. Oh
week.
My God.
You might see Nick Mullins versus Nathan Peterman. There's two.
Now there's a debate: Nathan Peterman and Gardner Minshew. Those two are actually close. Yeah, as you know, we had
that is tremendous disrespect to Gardner Minshew.
That is accurate reporting on my part and analysis. You know, when Nick Mullins was here, I just said the guy can't play in the NFL. Why is he still in the NFL? He must be a really good guy or a leader. He's got to have some attribute that I don't yet understand.
I don't know. I'm not nearly. Now, Nick, when he was here, was coming off, I think it was shoulder or elbow surgery. I forget which one. And he clearly wasn't healthy. With San Francisco, yeah, I never understood your now, you know, my respect for Kyle Shanahan. He can scheme people up, but he wasn't bad for a backup third string quarterback. There's a lot of bad backup quarterbacks, Jody. That's my major point.
Nick Mullins is certainly one of them. And sorry to say this, I know it's blasphemous here in Philadelphia. So is Nick Foles. What happened in the past will never change.
Years.
It's etched in stone. There, speaking of stone, there's a stone statue outside the stadium to recognize what he did. And I am not knocking or mocking or questioning any of that. That happened. We all saw it with our very eyes. Johnny Mac saw it in person. He can't play anymore. He shouldn't be. He shouldn't have been in the league.
We're going to see one. We're going to see one this week, probably in Tyrod Taylor. But you know, there's a lot of bad quarterback.
I'll take Tyrod Taylor over Gardner Minshew every day of the week and twice on Sunday. That's why I'm not locking this game up just yet. And we have to hope and believe that Jalen Hurts is going to play. Much more so importance of the games that come thereafter, come playoff time, but. Yeah, you talk about the journey you got to take from going from the potential number one seed to having to play probably 3 straight playoff road games. Sorry, we talked about it, the window being open to go to the Super Bowl this year. Holy mackerel. The window doesn't shut, but it's as wide open as can be when you're the number one seed.
Losing this game would be a catastrophe because you're not getting help from Washington. I mean, forget about that. You're not going to back into the number one seed. So you got to win this game. There's no doubt about it. You got to win this game.
If the Commanders don't beat the Cowboys on Sunday, I'm blaming Ed Kratz. It's all Ed Kratz's fault if they don't win that game because Sam Howell's not good enough to step in and play. Sorry. I have strong opinions on quarterbacks, and my opinion on Sam Howell was he was woefully overrated after his
Daniel Jones is one of them. Daniel Jones has turned the narrative around. Daniel Jones is I'm not going to call him entrenched, but the Giants are going to re-sign him. The Giants are going to give him a big deal.
You know that, and now I'm going to get myself in trouble again because I've had to put out some mea culpas from Daniel Jones because, did I call him on the carpet for his inabilities over the year? Yeah, I have to give him credit for the season that he's had. The Giants have virtually no weapons at wide receiver, and he's still finding ways to win games.
He's turning Isaiah Hodgkins into a star, whatever his name is. Isaiah Hodgkins.
Hodgkins, I believe it is. Hodgins. I'm not even sure either. So I've had to do some mea culpas on Daniel Jones between you and me, and we got Pat Leonard coming up, a Giant guy, in less than 20 minutes from now. It could be one of the better things that happened to the Eagles over the offseason if the Giants woefully overpay Daniel Jones. Now, if he just continues to ascend, I'm going to look even more stupid.
No, I'm with you. I think there's limitations there. But I do think, a big part of Daniel Jones' 180 has been Brian Daboll and Mike Kapka. I do think, if you're in a good position with good coaches, they can elevate. You talked about Nick Mullins with Kyle Shanahan, and he was able to scheme him up into doing some things. And you see what Brock Purdy's doing as a third string quarterback and just winning football games and putting up unbelievable numbers. I guess what? If you put Brock Purdy in Houston, he's not doing what he's doing in San Francisco. So I do think, the Giants finally got it right. And that's, my concern about the Giants. If I'm an Eagles fan, they got a good coach, and I don't think Cap is going to be there long because he's probably going to get a head coaching job soon. not this year, but soon. I don't think he's going to be there for a long time. You know, they finally got it right at coach, and you know that's going to be a problem.
Agreed. I think Daboll's done an outstanding job. And oh, by the way, and again, don't want to get too far afield. We got Pat Leonard coming up. How badly did the Chargers screw it up last year? That they had Daboll in their sights, that there were rumors out there was all but a done deal. And then all of a sudden, Staley is their head coach.
Yeah.
And they had Brian Daboll. He wanted that job, and something went wrong out there. I apologize because I don't remember what it was as far as the reporting goes, but he was supposed to be their next head coach. He was supposed to be undertaking Justin Herbert for the next decade. How badly did LA screw that up?
Were you a Brady Bunch fan growing up, Jody? Did you watch the Brady Bunch?
Oh, yeah.
Remember the one where Greg became the rock star and he was Johnny, I think it was Johnny Bravo, because he fit
exactly
the suits.
Right.
He fit
the jacket. Yes, that's why he was Johnny Bravo.
Yeah. Well, Brandon Staley fits the suits in the NFL, what they think of a new, young, ascending head coach. Brian Daboll doesn't. That's what happened.
So how dare the New York Giants hire a guy who doesn't fit the suit? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. Well, the Giants, you know, you should be more open-minded is what I'm telling you. The Chargers. The Giants, look, they've made a ton of bad decisions at coaching. They, you know, since Tom Coughlin left, they've made bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. They finally got it right. So you give them credit for getting it right this time, but they've made a lot of mistakes as well. Yeah, I mean, people make mistakes all the time hiring coaches. And with Brandon Staley, he fit the suit. You know, he fit the Sean McVay suit is what it is.
Well, and he didn't fit the suit because he's defense. The NFL is all trending toward all offensive coach. You have to find that next.
I'm talking about the look.
Coach.
I'm talking about the look, not the scheme and not the offense.
Because stop. Do you really believe that an NFL team would hire a guy because of what he looks like?
No, you're misunderstanding.
I really am. Please explain.
They want young, energetic. They want a certain type of person who looks a certain way. And I'm not talking about race or anything like that because people's jumping. They want a young guy who they think is going to be there for 20 years. And everybody wants Sean McVay. Everybody wants that type. And he coached under Sean McVay. And again, if you ever ordered a coffee, and that's why I bring up the Brady Bunch. Everybody wants that style of coach. You see it with Kevin O'Connell. You see it with Nick Sirianni, to be honest. Everybody wants that style of young coach.
How old is Staley as compared to Daboll?
Brandon's, I have to look it up. He's in his 30s.
You think there's more than 5 years between them?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. Maybe it was an age thing. Whatever it was, shame on the Chargers. And the Giants benefited because Daboll was still available and made a great hire with him this offseason. All right, McDonald and McMullen hanging with you on Birds 365. We'll take a timeout. When we come back, I'm going to talk about a former Eagle who got snubbed yesterday. And between you and me, it really pisses me off as far as Hall of Fame status goes. We'll touch on that next. Birds 365 coming right back.
Go for the beers, go for the cheers, go for the hit and the hits, go for the scene, go for the screens, go for the gallery, go for the win, go to Ocean.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for a December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Rams starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Post-game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post-game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
You got your Mac guys, Jody McDonald and John McMullen here with you on Birds 365. We're getting ready and prepped for the Giant and Eagle game coming up on Sunday. To that note, we're going to bring up Pat Leonard, who has been on with us earlier on Birds 365. Good dude, does a very good job covering the Giants for the New York Daily News. Covers the whole league, but he works the Giant beat as well. And we'll see if he's reading the tea leaves correctly on what the Giants are planning on doing as to whether to rest and or completely go for it in their final game against Eagles. So looking forward to talking to Pat. I did see this morning, John, and it was supposed to be released on Tuesday, and they held off a day to do so because of the situation in Buffalo with the questions to the health of Mr. Hamlin, who got hurt on Monday night. The NFL, or I guess it's not even an NFL thing. It's not the league that releases the information. It's the Hall of Fame. The finalists for this year's Hall of Fame balloting were supposed to be released on Tuesday, and they pushed it to Wednesday. They cut from 28 down to 15. There are 15 finalists, 28 semifinalists. And there were a couple ex-Eagles on the semifinal list, one of which I absolutely believe is a Hall of Famer, one of which, sorry to say, I don't. And that was Ricky Waters and Eric Allen. It might have been if it was Ricky's second time to make the ballot. I'm not sure about that. Eric Allen has been on the ballot for years, and he doesn't even make the finalists. He got cut again from the semifinalists to the finalists to cut down from 28 to 15. Eric Allen did not make the cut of the final 15. Now, making the cut of the final 15 doesn't guarantee you getting in, but Eric didn't even make that cut. I have less of a grasp of how the voting populace of the Hall of Fame for football works more so than I do for baseball. What am I missing? Am I just looking at it through eagle-colored glasses? That in my mind, Eric Allen is an unquestioned Hall of Famer. And not only is he not getting in, he's not getting close. What am I missing out on here, Johnny Mac?
A little bit, to be honest, a little bit. I think it's Eagles colored glasses. I think it's one thing, Zach Thomas, who's a finalist. I think I saw our buddy Mike Tanier. He always said, because I've heard the same thing. So I kind of laughed out loud. He said, everybody complains. And somebody was on there saying, well, London Fletcher should be in the Hall of Fame ahead of Zach Thomas. And Mike heard the same thing I heard. Every city's got its linebacker. They all love a linebacker. The two things with Eric Allen. I think one is the farther you get away from your playing days in the prime, I do think some things get lost in translation. I think he's a borderline candidate. So that's part of it. Part of it is, Eagles colored glasses a little bit. He's not Darrelle Revis, for instance. There are certain guys who are slam dunk Hall of Famers. They're just so dominant at their particular positions. And I bring up Revis, not because you're a Jets fan, but because, he's first ballot and he's going in. I mean, he was that dominant of a player in his era amongst his group. Joe Thomas, similarly, I think this year, first ballot, slam dunk. So there are different levels, and there's certain. Is he that type of slam? No, not even close. Then there's the statistics thing, and God love Reuben Frank, our buddy from NBC Sports Philadelphia, big stat guy. And, you have these, and Jeff Kerr does it for us. You have these, and you can move them and say, well, he's the only player to do this, and he's the only player to do that. And a lot of it is longevity, which is part of being a good player. But I think for the Hall of Fame voters, and we've had tons of them on this show, we've been lucky enough, starting with Paul Domowitz, our own at JAKIB Sports. But we've had, John McMullen, and we've had D. Orlando Ledbetter, so many,
Gary Myers been on with a bunch.
Gary Myers, Ira Kaufman's been on with us. So many, and I'm leaving people out. And, I've talked to a bunch of them over the years, and they're really focused on dominance and being at the top of your position group in your era. And that's what makes Hall of Famers. And then you could start to talk about the longevity aspect in the, for you as a baseball guy, the stat compiler. Does Harold Baines belong in the Baseball Hall of Fame? I would argue no. But he's got great stats. He's stuck around a long time.
He really doesn't. He had a bunch of buddies that were on that committee that year that pushed him through.
I mean by stat compiler, I mean there's tons of them in the Hall of Fame, and you have that argument of longevity versus dominance. And I've always been in the camp of dominance, like Terrell Davis. I have no problem with Terrell Davis being in the Hall of Fame. A lot of people do, because very short career, but at the height of his career, I often joke about John Elway. He was losing Super Bowls when he was great. When he was winning Super Bowls, he was getting carried by Terrell Davis and that team. And it gets lost in translation. All they see is 2 Super Bowl rings. So I mean that's my explanation. But he should be in the conversation. I don't know if there are any other cornerbacks. I forget who made the finalist. So
no, I think Darrell was the only one.
I'll use Darrell. I mean, they're not close. One's a slam dunk, and one's not.
Yeah,
now I'm going to get killed,
and he's the one guy because he's a Jet guy. I feel strongly about Darrelle Revis. He's a Hall of Famer too. But as far as your overall point on Hall of Fame, why did it become an either-or thing, a black or a white thing, a get to one side of the argument or the other thing? Why can't a guy deserve Hall of Fame status, even if his career was cut short because of injury, but he was stone cold dominant like Terrell Davis? Or, yes, you put compiling in a certain light, in the light that it should be, at least my opinion. That's a positive. If you're good enough to stick around in a whatever sport you're talking about, where they're trying to churn, where they're trying to get younger. Shoot, you just told me that's what they do with coaches, because Brandon Staley is 7 years younger than Brian Dable. That's why he got the job in Los Angeles rather than Dable.
He looks 15 years younger.
7. I looked it up. 7 years difference between the two guys.
No, I said, but
everybody's always looking for younger, newer. Get the young blood.
There's a lot of ageism. There's no question about it.
And a guy like Eric Allen, who after he left Philadelphia was good with New Orleans, was good with the Raiders. That's a positive. That shouldn't be looked at as, oh, you're just compiling. You're just sticking around. You're just putting up numbers. It really doesn't matter. Bullshit. If you're on a roster, if a team still thinks you're good enough, they're putting you out there every single week, even at your quote-unquote advanced age. That is a positive as far as I'm concerned, and guys should get credit for it.
Well, there's a lot of guys.
I mean, held against
you got to, and those guys have a very difficult job. And, I'm the first to say, because I'll be the first to tell you, I look at some of the names on the modern list, on the amongst the modern players, and I say to myself, because I have a bias the other way. I have a bias towards the older players, the older generation. Like the 70s guys, those guys are legendary to me. The Steelers, all the Steelers in the Hall of Fame, all the great teams, there were dynasties in the 70s because it was different, and you could keep guys together. There was no free agency, and you had all these legendary teams. I have to check my own bias because I'm always biased towards those guys, and I start looking at this year, and people say, there are certain guys I write that, like I said, Revis and Thomas. There are certain guys like Torrey Holt I look at, and Andre Johnson, and they're great players, right? And I say, I just don't look at them as Hall of Famers. I just don't. And so I got my own biases, and it's a very difficult transition. And that's why they focus on all pro nods and dominance and things like that. And I think for the most part, they do a good job. I think he's a borderline candidate. If he gets in eventually, it wouldn't surprise me. If he doesn't get in, it wouldn't surprise me. I think there's certain guys that are borderline candidates, and he's one of them.
And let me give you one more thing. And Pat Leonard's going to be here in a second. We're looking forward to talking to him. Another thing that bothers me about the Hall of Fame process, and I'm more in tune with the baseball one than the football one, but I think I got a pretty good grasp on the football one. Albert Lewis, who has been on the ballot for 20 years, has not been a finalist like for a decade, somehow got the nod as a finalist this year because it's his last year on the ballot. And if he doesn't, he too will transfer to the veteran status. And oh, by the way, Joe Klecko up for veteran election this year. Please let that happen. Two guys I feel most strongly about, Joe Klecko and Eric Allen. Maybe Klecko gets in, Allen gets shafted again. Albert Lewis wasn't as good a cornerback as Eric Allen. But because it's his last year, I guess I have to root for Albert Lewis as well, because then I'm going to make sure and double check when Eric Allen's last year is. Because if that's part of the way that they elect these guys, and I disagree with vehemently, if you're a Hall of Famer, you're a Hall of Famer, you should get in. If you're not, you shouldn't. You shouldn't get in just because, your status is at close to an end. But Albert Lewis is the other cornerback.
Yeah, I wouldn't put him in. I wouldn't put him in. My standards are very high for Hall of Fame. I don't think it's the Hall of Very Good, the old cliche. If you force me to say both of them, I wouldn't put either of them in, to be honest.
Yeah,
I put Darrell Revis in.
I put Revis in, but I also put Eric Allen in. All right, coming up next, Pat Leonard for the New York Daily News. Oh, he's good at reading the tea leaves. He's good at reading between the lines. He's going to tell us exactly what Brian Dable is going to do as far as who's going to play against the Eagles on Sunday. Or at least we're going to ask him. Pat Leonard, New York Daily News, joins us next here on Birds 365.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for a December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Rams starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Game Show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
Appreciate you streaming it on Bird 365 as we continue the countdown to Giants-Eagles coming up on Sunday. And a couple of weeks ago when the Eagles put a 20-plus point beat down on the Giants, didn't look like the Giants were going to be the ones who didn't have to sweat this game. Looked like the Eagles, and it's the exact opposite. Eagles needed, Giants don't. Here to give us a Giant perspective is the guy who covers them day in and day out for the New York Daily News, his podcast, Talking Ball with Pat Leonard, a good listen for you football fans out there as well. Pat Leonard here with us on Birds 365. So did you get to take the week off since the Giants really don't have to win this game? Yeah, you don't have to show up at the go ahead, Leonard. Take an extra week off after the holidays.
Yeah, right. Jody and John, thanks for having me. Hey, listen, we've been waiting for playoff football for so long around here in New York, New Jersey, that it's just gearing up now. I mean, you guys know, being in Philadelphia, it's essentially an annual ritual right now with what the Eagles have been doing. But obviously, like you said, it's kind of flipped on its head what we expected this week to be. But with the tragedy that happened in Cincinnati and Buffalo, with the NFL's uncertainty about the schedule, and then with the Giants being in the playoffs and the uncertainty of who they play and who they don't play against Philly, man, no breaks here. No breaks here, Jody.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, that's tougher for you, Pat. We've been through this here in Philadelphia last year. And last year it was crazy because the COVID rules were still in effect last year. So the Eagles manipulated that and sat down 12 players. And it didn't work for them because they got blitzed in Tampa Bay in the playoffs as the 7 seed. Right. But I got to tell you, Brian Daboll was fired up, rightfully so, after clinching the playoffs postseason. Yeah, we're going to play. We're going to play. Joe Shane getting his ear a little bit and say, come on, buddy, tone it down.
Yeah, I think you hit that right on the head, is that it's not just Dable making the decision. Joe Shane, the GM, he and Dable collaboratively make their decisions on the roster, on the game day roster, which is a little bit more like a baseball, a Major League Baseball team now would be arranged as far as their bureaucracy is concerned, rather than an NFL team, though obviously it's becoming a little bit more common. One thing Dable said after the game that should be clarified too is, it was misrepresented a little bit out there that he said he was going to play his guys. He was asked, is there any thought to resting guys? And he said no. And then somebody followed up and said, are you saying you're not going to rest guys, or you just don't want to think about it right now? And he said, I'm not thinking about it right now. So he was essentially saying, like, I'm not making that call today. Talking to him, talking to the players, Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, guys like that, they're guys who like to play, want to play, but I'm going to tell you right now, without knowing for sure, I think they're going to sit a lot of guys. It's going to be hard, I think, for the Giants to do that because of how much they hate the Eagles. But I think that, and like you said, it doesn't always necessarily work out. But when I asked Brian Daboll at the start of this week, I said, listen, in 2007, Tom Coughlin played all his guys against the Patriots. Obviously, it was a unique situation.
Yeah.
Patriots were undefeated, integrity of the game and all that. But I asked him if that's a huge part of Giants franchise lore. And you have the same ownership. And he said, well, every year is different. And so, the way he answered that question to me sounded like he was saying, I get where you're going, but we have to worry about what we're doing.
And then there's the all-important hedge position, which is like an exhibition game. You get your starters out there, you get them some reps, you let them feel good about getting dressed for a Sunday and mindset and everything else. Yeah. And then at some point you go, no, off the field. Take off the shoulder pads. No, we're not risking you anymore. Is there a better chance than that happens? A better chance that they play the whole game? A better chance that the key 5 or 6 guys aren't even dressed or active for Sunday? Where do you fall on the in the middle, play it more like a preseason possibility?
I would say if you see a guy out there for a brief time, like a preseason game, I would almost wonder, and I'm actually doing reporting on this right now, if it's incentive based, if they're trying to do right by a guy, because I think just in and of itself, like let's say playing Daniel Jones for a quarter, to me makes no sense. Like I think you either play him or you don't. And I think guys like Jones and Barkley, who not only have had injury problems in the past, but also now are making strong arguments to be a part of your future. I'm not sure if after getting through the 17 weeks, it would be smart to put them against one of the best teams in the league and say, stay on the field for us another week. I'm not sure. I would say guys like Daniel Jones, Saquon, Andrew Thomas, the left tackle, Dexter Lawrence, and Leonard Williams on the defensive line. I think all guys like that, and that's just a few of them, but I would say there's a bunch of guys like that who I do not expect to play at all. You're right, though. There's a chance that Daboll views this as let's keep guys' legs warm. And Jody, I would say this, and John, it looks like the games are going to happen as scheduled. That's what the NFL said as of Wednesday. But you think if they are going to make some kind of last minute drastic change to the schedule, or if that's a possibility, and you're going to push games back and then the playoffs are going to fall back another week and that kind of thing, I don't know if it's going to happen. But if you rest guys, now they're going, let's say, 2 weeks between playing a football game, or really 3 weeks. Not that that's going to happen, but I think that has to be in your mind if you're Daboll when you're approaching this.
Yeah, that's a good point, Pat. I hadn't considered that. I would think the teams have a better feel. Certainly looks like the NFL is going to stick status quo, maybe go winning percentage. And if anything, I saw that wacky, maybe play the NFC wild card games and play the Bills Bengals. I don't know if you saw that floated out there.
Yeah.
And then postpone the AFC wild card to the next weekend. And then you kind of flip everything and skip the bye week up to the Super Bowl. I don't think that's going to happen. I do think they're going to play this weekend, though. And the Giants probably have a good feel for that. I would think the league teams have a better feel for that. Certainly here in Philadelphia, the Eagles, they think they're playing. So,
and I think to your point, if we don't find out today that anything's changing, like you can't announce on Friday that Sunday's games aren't happening, right? So it's either going to be a decision today or we're full steam ahead.
Yeah. As a whole for the Giants, and you bring up Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, great stories, great bounce backs. And you mentioned their future, because that's a big thing. Is that a difficult decision for the Giants from the perspective of, these guys have done it this year, and Brian's done a great job, and he's in the mix for Coach of the Year, deservedly so. Is there any thought maybe it's fool's gold, though? Not with Barkley. Barkley, it's about position more than talent. Obviously, we all know the talent. But with Daniel Jones, we've seen a lot of bad football. Now we see a little bit of good football.
Yeah, no, John, you're right on the mark with seeing that. So the difference, there's a lot of differences between Joe Schoen and Dave Gettleman, but one of the most refreshing and interesting and meaningful ones in this context of your question is he and the Giants, is the best that I can understand, they are not allowing their success this season to cloud their decision-making and their recognition of what they actually are. And, I think teams like Howie and the Eagles, Les Snead and the Rams over these years, the best GMs know what their team is and know what their team isn't. And if you don't realize that and figure that out first, then everything you do after that could be following or taking you to the wrong conclusion. And so when you look at Daniel Jones and Saquon, are they encouraged by their performance? Yes. Are they looking to bring both back? Yes. But does that mean it's a blank check and we're not going to investigate all possibilities and we're not still considering what the best opportunity is for us everywhere? No, like they are keeping their options open. I do think Jones has earned the right to be their quarterback definitely next year. They have one franchise tag to use. Who do they use it on? Do they use it on Daniel? Do they use it on Saquon? Do they pay Daniel long-term and tag Saquon? To me, that would be the more prudent decision if you're confident in both, because a running back's a running back. And frankly, even though Saquon's a talented player, I look around the league and I see guys like Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler, what Miles Sanders did for the Eagles this year. I think it's been said a lot how replaceable good running backs are. That doesn't mean they're not talented, but are you paying Saquon more than Austin Eckler, who is a better running back week to week, more productive? I mean, I don't know. I mean, those are the questions you have to ask. I think Joe Schoen will be reasonable and realistic on those decisions.
Some very interesting conversations after the season, but they want to finish the season. Going to be in the playoffs for the first time in a long time. So the Giants trying to stay in the moment. I understand that. In the moment, how have they been able to do what they've done with the wide receiver room that they have? That's one of the reasons why I got to give Daniel Jones credit this year. And my mea culpa is because I called him a bottom 10 quarterback in the NFL. Who are these guys? And they're no one's having 1,000-yard year, but they're guys that are making big catches and helping them win. Get rich. Where is Richie James from? I don't even know.
Hodgins. Where did Hodgins? They got Hodgins from Buffalo. He's
yeah. So I'll start with Hodgins because I was actually just talking to his trainer yesterday, a guy named Bert Wiggum, and Bert works with Gabe Davis, and Hodgins was in Buffalo with Gabe Davis, with Stephon Diggs. And listen, everybody always touts their guys, but it sounds like Hodgins is the kind of guy who had some talent, but Buffalo was so stacked at receiver, he couldn't get on the field. And with a team that was trying to build and win a Super Bowl, they needed guys who could play special teams as well right away, productively and consistently on their current roster. So that's how he finds his way to the Giants. But the Giants, with Joe Schoen having known him from Buffalo, they knew what he was capable of. And Hodgins actually trained with Gabe Davis this offseason, puts on some weight because you can see he's 6'4", but he's wiry. So he put on some weight and he can get open. I mean, he is the biggest surprise of all of them. Darius Slayton, he got them through the toughest part of their year. Really a mentally tough guy. I mean, he's basically been their leading receiver now, I think, by yards for 3 straight years. And at the beginning of the year, they were trying to trade him. They considered him a replaceable piece. They didn't really give him a shot. Frankly, Dable and Shane, I think, misevaluated the guy, and he proved them wrong. So good on him. And then Richie James, Jody, I mean, you hit it on the head. This guy, not only did he come out of nowhere, former 49er, kind of bounced around, really a special teamer who they saw as a slot receiver that could get them through until the rookie Wan'Dale Robinson came of his own. Robinson obviously got hurt, and James also had 2 concussions and had the big fumbles that cost him the game in Seattle. So not just did you expect really little of him at the beginning of the year, but even given the way most of the season went, the fact that James is going for like 7 or 8 or 9 catches in all these games and scoring in so many of these weeks is mind-blowing. And the final thing I would add is Daniel Bellinger, the rookie tight end, still a developmental player, but definitely a better and more valuable player than anybody who's been able to play underneath him when he's been out. And Daniel Jones clearly trusts these guys. He trusts them.
Yeah. And with Hodgins, to me, and I've only seen him play a little bit, but seems like a really good route runner as well. Maybe that's Diggs' influence because nobody runs routes better than
Well,
Diggs.
and it sounds like the routes that he runs well were Diggs's routes in Buffalo. So he's not getting on the field to run them, right? And so that's where that's how.
So sometimes you just need an opportunity. I've been really impressed with him. But talking to you, Pat, I hear some of these names, and you're talking about, the Giants haven't been good for a while. You know that better than anybody. And we talk about Daniel Jones and Saquon all the time, but Dexter Lawrence, you mentioned, Leonard Williams, Kayvon Thibodeau. Now Xavier McKinney's back. All of a sudden, this team's got some pretty good players. You wake up, you're bad for a while. You wake up. I said this about the Lions as well. You're drafting highly, and all of a sudden, you got a bunch of good players. You brought up Thomas, and Evan Neal hasn't played well, but he's got a ton of talent.
Yep.
All of a sudden, you start to think, wow, maybe something's cooking here.
Yeah, this NFL build on parity. And, so Daniel Jones, 6th overall pick. Andrew Thomas, 4th overall pick. Kayvon Thibodeau, 5th overall pick. Evan Neal, 7th overall pick. Saquon Barkley, 2nd overall pick. And sometimes all it takes is to, put it in the pot and stir it in the right way. And suddenly you say, wow, look at all these first-round picks we have on our field. We're actually not that bad. Now, you guys know that the NFC East caught a break in playing the AFC South this year.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason for some of these wins. But not only did the Giants beat a bunch of teams that could be or will, could be in the playoffs, like Baltimore is in, Green Bay, Jacksonville. But I think they're a better team than the Vikings. If Adoree Jackson comes back, their top corner, who I don't think he's going to play against the Eagles. We'll see. I'm not sure. He was limited in practice. But if he comes back and can play and try and limit Justin Jefferson a little bit if they play the Vikings in that first round, I think they win in Minnesota. In fact, I don't have any question.
Well, they should have won last time. To your point, I mean, it was a 61-yard field goal by a bad kicker who usually doesn't, so that was a little bit of bad luck from the Giants' perspective. But then Minnesota lost 2 offensive linemen last week. So, they're going to play a center. They got up the street this week. I'm with you. And that's why I say if the Giants play this game to win, that's the first time I'm going to criticize Brian Daboll. Because they're sitting there. They got an upset brewing to get to the divisional round. And who would have said that? I want to keep everybody as healthy as possible.
No doubt. That's why to me, the one I agree with, and I think they will sit guys, but I'm so fascinated so listen, you guys know the Giants and Eagles hate each other. The Eagles have just been beating the Giants down repeatedly. I mean, they've won 10 of the last 12. They lost to Washington a couple years ago to keep the Giants out of the playoffs. They just beat the Giants so bad at MetLife Stadium. Can I say this, that Saquon Barkley and all the Giants were saying, we got our ass whooped. And I can tell you this, I've never heard the Giants, as bad as they've been all these years, I've never heard the Giants players after a game admit that a division rival was so much better than them than after that game a few weeks ago. I mean, it was crazy. So not only that, they know that if they win this game, they can damage the Eagles' chances of getting the 1 seed or prevent them from getting the 1 seed. So I just wonder when John Mara's sitting there talking to Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, how much he's kind of rocking in his chair a little bit and saying, yeah, but could we just beat them?
This is Philly we're talking about here, right? We're playing Philly this week, and we're talking about pulling in the oars on the boat. Yeah, Mr. Mara may have a different look at it. You're right.
Yeah.
I do need your take on this because I thought this was going to be a bigger story than it turned out to be, and I understand why it hasn't because of what transpired on Monday night with DeMar Hamlin in Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
Kayvon Thibodeau this past week sacks Nick Foles, and he goes to snow angels on the ground. And Nick Foles is lying there next to him, shaking. I don't know if it was convulsing, but he's there on the ground, shaking next to him.
Yeah.
And Kayvon says after the game, well, I didn't notice that he was lying there. He's about 1.5 feet away, but he said he didn't notice him. So it's straining believability to begin with. But even if I give him the benefit of the doubt, so be it. He goes to the sleeping sign on the sidelines that he put Nick Foles to sleep. That's really not good. That's a bad, forget about optics. That's just wrong. And I thought it was going to be a big story, but it was usurped by an even bigger story.
Well, no, actually, I'm not sure if you saw his latest comments to me and a couple others yesterday, but after Jeff Saturday ripped Kayvon Thibodeau in Indianapolis, he said it was a tasteless trash celebration. We asked Kayvon on Wednesday at the Giants what his response would be to Saturday. And he said, I don't even know who he is. And he reiterated he hopes Nick Foles is okay. But he defended very publicly the idea that he's allowed to celebrate. And he said, I don't want to hurt guys, but I'm paid to be a savage and sack quarterbacks. I hope Nick Foles is okay. It did not strike the tone, I think, that, the Giants were hoping for, that you would have expected. Again, Kayvon did say he didn't know he was injured at first. He said of the go to sleep sign, he said that he hadn't looked back to see that he was hurt. He was doing that because
he went there twice. He did. He really went there twice. He's laying 1.5 feet away from him, and he didn't know he was hurt. And he didn't look back. He got up and never noticed that there was a quarterback being helped up off the field. Really?
And Jody, to your point, like the cart, by that point, the cart's on the field.
Stop it.
And even like I saw Julian Love actually say something to Kayvon as they were leaving the field after the celebration, which I didn't ask Julian this yet, but I would have to think it was something about, hey man, but you should go take a look at the quotes and the video from Wednesday, because I really think that this story might, to your point, it should be a big story. And I think it's going to keep being one, because I have a good feeling that Jeff Saturday, 6-time Pro Bowl, 2-time All-Pro, Super Bowl champion, when Kayvon Thibodeau says he has no idea who he is, I find it hard to believe Saturday won't respond to that.
Yeah, he might. But the one thing I do believe from what Kayvon said and handled this situation, he probably doesn't know who Jeff Saturday is. I mean, I know you, Pat. I've talked to so many young players, and they, a lot of them don't pay attention to the history of the game. I mean, to us, it's like, what? You don't know who Jeff Saturday is? That's kind of not. I believe that. I don't know if it's true, but I believe that.
All right. So let me ask both of you a question.
Yeah.
And it's specifically directed toward Kayvon, but young players in the NFL in general as well. It was a pretty damn big story 7 weeks ago, whenever it was, when Jeff Saturday got the job. Not because he was Jeff Saturday, former great, former cult friend of the. No, it was a big story because it was a guy who wasn't coaching, who was on ESPN, and they just throw him in as the head coach of an NFL team. And it's talked about on the NFL Network day in and day out, other media outlets, and like Kayvon Thibodeau and other young guys around the NFL just so blind to what's going on in the league? Are they so narrow focused on their own job and their own team that they don't know about major breaking stories around the league? Is that true?
That is a thing. I mean, it's not every guy though. It's not a blanket statement for sure.
No, it's not a blanket statement at all. I can tell you right off that veteran player, Fletcher Cox, does not watch football. He does not watch football. He tells me all the time. People ask him, I don't watch football. I don't want. He wants to get away from football when he's not doing it. It's his whole life. It's encompassed his whole life, and that's a veteran player. Right. Pat's right. Not everybody. There's a lot of guys who love the game and they sit and they watch and when they have some time. But there's a lot of players. You'd be surprised, Jody. There's a lot of players who are like, I got my job.
Yeah,
I could see not getting in the weeds like Pat Leonard does, like Jody McDonald, like John McMullen does, but it's like the biggest story. How the hell did they hire a guy off an ESPN stage to be the head coach? Guys are oblivious to that. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't get that. That's my bad. I apologize.
No, that's not your bad. They should. I mean, listen, especially because you have to think at the start of the team meeting when they're playing the Colts, Brian Daboll's at least like, listen, here's the head coach. Here's the way he coaches the team. Here's the style of play. Okay, now we're going to break up offense and defense. I mean, so, you know, there's probably, I would think that'd be said at least once in a week.
And I don't know Kayvon, but
I like Kayvon a lot. I like Kayvon a lot. He's a good guy, but yeah, Jody, you'd be surprised at how many guys are like that. Landon Collins is like that, doesn't watch football.
Yeah.
Hey, and that's a great story. Talk about a guy coming out of nowhere.
Landon
Collins
played
on
well.
the street. And he stepped up these last couple of weeks. Give Joe Shane credit for that one, because he was persona non grata when he left the Giants, and now he's back and a key contributor for him going into the playoffs.
Yeah, and you know what happened there was when he got here, like he looked at me like the first day. I mean, I can say this now. He looks at me. I said, "Are you ready to play?" He goes, "Ah, man, I'm like 10 pounds overweight." And, you know, he came here. He was happy to have a job back at the team where he knows people. They trust him. He trusts them. But then they gave him a ramp up and they put him on the field for a little bit, for a couple of weeks. But really, he did a lot of conditioning and training work to get into game shape and to learn Wink Martindale's playbook. And you're right. I mean, you know, you lose appreciation, and you guys know this too. Like, you lose appreciation sometimes for guys who can just line up a guy and tackle him when it's one-on-one. And until you watch a defense where people are slipping off DBs and they're going to the house, and Landon Collins punishes people if they don't know he's coming.
Yeah. And he's been playing linebacker quite a bit, hasn't he?
Landon which he was publicly upset about in Washington when they moved him to linebacker. He came out and said, like, I don't want to do it. Yeah. And, but the Giants have him. I think part of the reason they're able to get him to do it. Well, first of all, if you ask him about playing linebacker still, even though he's doing it, it's not like he's going to say he's okay doing it. Like, he will always see himself as a safety. But Wink Martindale, I think, sells these guys on the hybrid positionless defense mindset of it. And so then when you're playing some plays in a safety look, some plays in a linebacker look, I think it enables a proud guy like Collins, for example, to say, like, oh, I'll just play this role because it's not like I'm just a linebacker, even though that is what he is, you know.
Last one from me, Pat. You brought up Wink. I want to talk about Wink because I think he would be an Eagles fan dream coordinator. I mean, he's blitzing. He's coming from the buses, you know, play one. We talked about that Minnesota game with the 61-yard field goal. That's some of the bad. They gave up that, I think it was a little screen, a little bubble screen, whatever they ran. All of a sudden, they're in a position to try that field goal. You know, maybe if you play cover two, you know, you get to overtime, who knows what happens. So there's a give and take. You know, is Wink too aggressive? What's your thought process there?
No, I think you're right. That call against Minnesota backfired. They blitzed on the one side. Minnesota throws the bubble screen on the other side and then blocks it up perfectly, gets in range. The Giants still thought they tackled him out of field goal range, and then he makes a 61-yarder. But no, I think, John, first of all, this is how Wink coaches, and I do agree with his idea. He said this after that loss. He said, you know, this is how we play. I'm not going to apologize for it. And I do agree with coaches when they get in certain positions. They say, man, if I'm going to get fired and go out, I'm going to go out doing it my way. And so the more I'm around the game and pro sports, the more I do agree with that idea. But the other thing is just, he is concealing a lot of weaknesses by blitzing and creating pressure. And also, for a lot of the season, and now the Philadelphia Eagles don't usually have this problem of not being able to get to a quarterback with a 4-man rush. Yeah. But the Giants have had a huge problem with that for years and years and years. And not until Azeez Ojulari got healthy did they have a 4-man rush with Thibodeau, Ojulari, Lawrence, and Williams, where they could actually get to the quarterback in a fairly regular way and disruptive way with 4. And not to mention their back end has been hurt and also has been insufficient. And so, does he blitz too much? It's going to backfire sometimes, but frankly, I mean, if he played the Jonathan Gannon sit back in a soft coverage and keep everything in front of you, I mean, the Giants would get killed. And the Giants do, and the Giants do some of that. Their priority is, above all else, don't give up the 80-yard touchdown over our heads. So sometimes you will see them go into that shell and give up something underneath just to prevent, the AJ Brown or the Devontae Smiths of the world getting over top of them. But no, I think they like how he coaches, and I think it's been the right tone for them, especially for a team that had no confidence coming into the year. It's kind of added confidence. I think he should be a head coach, guys. I don't know what you think, but I think he should be a head coach next year.
Well, see if this year's Giant success affords him that possibility. All right, last thing, Pat. You're leaning toward the Giants being more protective than proactive with key positional players this year and this week, and certainly Daniel Jones is one of them. And we don't know yet that Jalen Hurts is going to be able to play for the Eagles if they were willing to take the chance and to shoulder shield enough. So a Gardner Minshew against Tyrod Taylor matchup. Who's got the better starting quarterback?
Wow, good. That's a good question. I think Taylor is the more versatile player because he can run. A couple of weeks ago, he got in at the end of a game. Which game was that? I'm blank. Was that the Eagles blowout where he scrambled and the defense, you could tell some of the linebackers thought he was just going to slide down after about 8 yards. Yeah. And Taylor saw a gap and he just blasted right through it. You could tell the guys on the field didn't know how fast he was. And so he can kill you with his legs and his arm. He will give receivers and also DBs opportunities down the field. He throws the ball down the field. So I think the Giants would make some splash plays. The Eagles also might have some chances for a pick or two down the field if he plays.
Yeah, he's got 8 passes this year, a touchdown and an interception. In 8 passes, he's got one of each. So you're right. He does take chances.
Yep. And I think Taylor's the better player because Minshew is more of a pocket passer. But, Gardner is like one of those guys. Eli Manning had this quality, frankly, like whatever happened on the previous play does not impact what he does on the next one.
Yeah.
And so that could be
memory of a goldfish. Unfortunately,
that could be a bad thing, but it could be a good thing too.
Yeah,
love that, Pat. Good thing whenever you join us, we know that for a fact. Thank you much for doing it today. If the Eagles and Giants are playing in the postseason, if the matchups fall that way, we're going to call you and ask you to come back on again. Thanks for doing it today.
I'll see you Sunday.
That's another factor. If they give them the 1 seed, maybe they face them.
That's right. So this might not be done yet, the New York-Philadelphia showdown. Thanks, Pat Leonard, the New York Daily News, here with us on Birds 365. John, we'll see him in the press box on Sunday. All right, we'll come back. Johnny Mac, Jody Mac, you know what we need to do. Put a bow on the show.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for a December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Rams starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
Mac putting a bow on the show for the Thursday prior to Giants-Eagles, second time this year. Yeah, the Eagles, what was it that Pat Leonard shared with us, that the Giants, they whooped our ass?
Yeah,
that's
they did whoop their ass. They did whoop their ass, man.
That's pretty much what happened at the Meadowlands some 3
I gotta
weeks
tell
ago.
you though, talking to Pat, I'm up on the Giants, man. They got a lot. You know me. Early in the season, I said
they
there were
weren't
two
even
teams.
trying to compete this year.
There were two teams, Giants and Bears, who I thought weren't trying to compete. All of a sudden, man, I always joke, you can talk yourself into anything in the NFL. Like, I don't see how Minnesota beats the Giants in the playoffs. I've already talked myself into that. Seems like Pat has as well. But I do think they're not playing anybody this weekend. So I'm not concerned about this weekend. But this is a better team than people realize.
Just the reason I asked the last question, beware Tyrod Taylor. He might come in and actually play pretty well for them. And, yeah, they got a no-name bunch of wide receivers that have contributed. The Eagles are supposed to beat the Giants any way you slice it. There's a reason they're the 14-point favorite. If Jalen plays, then the Eagles have to win the game. But the Giants, just because they take a couple of guys out doesn't mean they've played with this mentality all year. And every credit goes to the head coach, Brian Dable. They play hard. They play hard every single game, and they're going to play hard against the Eagles on Sunday. We'll talk about it a lot more tomorrow. Johnny Mac, it is Thursday. It is full practice. You are going to be allowed to watch some. What's the time frame look like? What time you're going to be down there?
A little bit different today because they kicked the coordinators back because of the Damar Hamlin situation. So Jonathan Gannon, I believe, talks at 12:30-ish. Shane Steichen right before practice, like 1:25, then practice, then locker room. Big day. Big day. So we'll let you get to it. But you will be back here with me tomorrow, right? Hour one, hour two likely to be Barrett or are the Great Tone DeShields, to be determined. Got to get to Nick Sirianni off the record.
Gotcha. But you're down there today, but you will be back here tomorrow, at least for hour number one with me in 2 and 2. See you tomorrow, partner.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.